Hey there! My name is Brandon Howe, and welcome back to my Making a Game series. In the last episode, we made new models for our enemies. So we have a new model for our turn enemy, our shooting enemy, and our turning and shooting enemy. In this episode, I am in pain because I already recorded this episode, and then it didn't record properly. It got all corrupted, and that sucks. So I've already made everything I was going to make for this episode. We made a shield power up and all of that. So I could go and delete it all and make it again, but I think it would just be faster, I suppose. I'm just going to go through everything that I made as if I'm making it for the first time, but I'll just not remake it. So we're making shield power ups so that they will spawn from enemies. Every certain amount of enemies that we destroy, it'll spawn a shield power up that'll fly forward, and then if we touch it, then we get a shield, and it basically counts as an extra hit. So first of all, we went and made our shield, which was this hexagonal thing, and I'll make it again, but I won't save it. So basically what I did to make this is I went mesh and I made an icosphere with subdivisions 2, went into edit mode, went control B to bevel, and then hit V to bevel with the vertices, and then hit C to clamp, went as high as I could go, then selected, and then with all of these hexagonal faces selected, went space, separate, or you hit P, separate selection, and now we have, if I go back out into object mode, we have two objects here, all these hexagons, and then this other bit. So I'm going to delete that other unwanted bit, and now we have all these hexagons, and then now I'm going to go and select everything, and then hit extrude, and then scale, and then I went by 0.95-ish. So now we got all that, and then I went to edit mode, or also hitting control N to normalize all the faces. And then I made this, just a green for that. It was called shield and all of that. So now I'm going to undo all of that, save it, go back into Blender, going from Blender back into Unity. Then I went and unchecked all of this and set all of this to calculate and that to 0 as we normally would. And then I made a new material that was a transparent green. I duplicated this green and then set this thing from rendering mode. It's normally on opaque, setting it to transparent, and then setting this alpha channel here down to, I set that to 20, and then I was messing around with this metallic value and the smoothest value between 0.1 and 1, and then got this material, and then putting our shield into the scene. This is what it looks like, pretty transparent, and it looks fine up close, and when it's on the player you can see through it enough to be able to still see the player. So now putting it on our player, this is all I really had to do. So yeah, putting it as a child object of the player, and then giving it a random rotator to have it spin randomly. So this is what it looks like on our player here, which is all nice and handy. Why else is that to tag the player, but that shouldn't really actually make any sort of a difference. And then by default, I set it false. So now to actually give our shield functionality, we're going over to our player and going into our player health script. Ignore all this other stuff that I've added. I'll get to that momentarily. So player health. So basically then what we did is we added a new private game object that is the shield. Then getting a reference to it by going transform.find shield.gameObject. And just to be safe in case we accidentally have it on, we want to start the level with the shield being false. Another sort of idea I got while I was doing this that I can suggest, hopefully inspire creativity, but I won't be implementing it myself, is you could have a system kind of like the masks Uka Uka in the early Crash Bandicoot games, where the more you get, they could get more powerful, and then they could also sort of save between levels. So if you end the level with having a shield, then you start the next one with a shield. But I'm hoping to keep sort of each level sort of independent from one another, so I will be turning the shield off by default. So now going in here, so we're going to want to test when the player gets hit. We're going to want to test if the shield is active in the hierarchy. So if it's on, if that check mark is true, if it exists, then we're going to want to disable the shield, and we're going to want to destroy the enemy that hit us. And then otherwise, if the shield is not on, so the normal state that we would normally be in, then do the stuff that we normally do with destroying the player and all that. So that's how we did that. So now from that, we have proper shield functionality, and I can go and show that off by, well, actually, it's going to get set to false by as soon as we start, but I can go in, and then as soon as this loads in, pause, set this to true, unpause, and then boom, we can get hit, we lose the shield, boom, we get hit again, and then we get destroyed properly. So now, setting this to false, so now we're going to want to set up a system to actually have the shield spawn in, or the shield pickup spawn in, and then, well, actually, first, should I say, we actually should create the shield pickup. So I just made sort of a mini version of the shield. Actually, it's the same shield, but scaled down. And then this will spawn in, and then fly towards the player, and then it'll spawn like that. So actually, if I spin this around, I can show this off. So we have a shield pickup. Sort of, we set this up exactly how we set up our player shots. If I open that, where we have 3 layers of objects here, because we're going to have the shot script has it moving forward relative to its upward direction, and then in here is the actual shot model itself, and then out here is another object just so that the forward direction of the whole thing is on the Z direction, so that when it spawns as a child object of the enemies, it'll spawn in the direction that we want it to. So copying that model, I did the same for the shield pickup, where we have 3 levels. So we have, yeah, the same thing set up so that its forward direction is the Z axis, then going down here, rotated by 90 degrees, so that when we move it forward with the shot, it'll move forward on this axis. And then, actually, hold up just a second. Yeah, just making sure that that is the same. So now, sorry, going back out, then having a sphere collider that's slightly bigger than the shield is, just so to give the player more lenience with catching it, I guess. And then also, actually, something I can fix. I had a destroy by time on this lower object, but I'm actually going to want to have it on the higher up shield pickup. So I guess it's a good thing I had to redo this so I could catch that, I guess. So now I'm going to apply that. So now, then we also have the shot move with set to 10, freezing all this stuff and turning off gravity as we did before. And then the child object that has a random rotator on it as well, and is scaled down by 0.5 on every axis. Making that a prefab, deleting it from the scene. Actually, I'll show it off, I guess. If this is on the right plane, when we activate, or when we hit it, boom, we get a shield, and then it acts like how it did before. Cool. So now we want to get the enemies to actually spawn them. So how we want to go about that? There's a few different ways that we could go about that randomness. One such way that I initially thought, but then thought of a system that I think works better. So we could have it a random percentage, I guess, and every time we destroy an enemy, have a random chance, like pick a random number between 1 and 5. If you picked exactly 5, then spawn a shield pickup. Then we could do something like that. However, the way the random chance isn't exactly as I would like it, because then you could fall into situations where, like, you could have 3 shield pickups spawn in a row and then go 10 enemies without spawning a shield pickup, and it could get uneven. So another way that I'm doing instead to make things a bit more even but still random, feeling random but not being as random, is I've made this enemy manager script, and that basically every time an enemy gets destroyed, it calls a function on this saying, hey, an enemy got destroyed. And then this will randomize an amount of a minimum number of enemies to get destroyed and a maximum number of enemies to get destroyed before the next pickup spawns. So in this case, I set it between 3 and 8. So every 3 to 8 enemies, it'll spawn a shield. And eventually we'll make another power-up. We're going to make a gun power-up that'll allow the player to temporarily shoot 2 guns, I guess. And we're going to give this the same randomness. You could have 2 sets of randomness, but we'll have this same randomness and then a 50-50 for which power-up it spawns, which I think works nicely. And then you could have on different levels, you could raise this up just to add more difficulty, or you could have enemy levels where you have none at all. So now let's go into these actual scripts. So over to the enemy manager. This also eventually might handle more things than just this. That's why I left it as generic a name as enemy manager, because I might want to maybe keep track of all the enemies for stuff that we might be doing later. We'll find out. If we deal with stuff with randomized enemy spawning, then this is something that we'd want to... Like, that'll probably be done in here as well, perhaps. Anywho, so first we get a reference to the shield pickup. And then we have the pickup min and pickup max variables, as you saw in the inspector. And now we're having a private integer that is the number of enemies left to spawn before we spawn. Or the number of enemies left to be destroyed before the shield pickup gets spawned. And then also we're just going to spawn the shield pickup as a child of that shot parent just to be neat and tidy in the inspector. So now on start we're going to want to define our pickup enemies left, and then to do that we're going to go random.range between that min and max. Now one thing about the min and max function, when you do it with one difference between the random one thing with the random.range function with integers as opposed to floats, when you do it with integers, it goes inclusively from the max to from the minimum to the max being exclusive. So if you set it between 3 and 6, it'll be a random number of 3, 4, or 5, but not 6. So that's why we added a +1 here, so this maximum value does get included in this context that we wanted to get included. And then getting a reference to the shot parent. Then we make this public function called enemy destroyed, and it's public, which means that any other script which has an access to this script can access this function. And then as well, we're going to pass along a transform that is the enemy's transformed the enemy that got destroyed, so you can spawn the pickup at its location. So when an enemy gets destroyed, we're going to decrease enemy pickup enemies left minus basically is just a shorthand for subtracting 1 from this variable. So then after we subtract 1 from it, we want to test if it equals 0, and if it does, then we instantiate the shield pickup at the enemy transforms position at its rotation with this shot parent as its parent. And then we're going to want to redefine our pickup enemies left to the same thing up here, being this random.range. All right, so now we need a way for this to actually get called by our enemies, which required me changing some things on the shot destroy and on the making a new script called enemy health, which I then put on every single enemy. So first we're going to look at the shot destroy, because actually this was the one that I did least changes to. Basically all I did was just get rid of the so this had to destroy the game object, which was the shot, and then also destroying the thing it collided with. Since we're going to be having a health script that deals with the enemy getting destroyed itself, we don't need the shot to also destroy it. So that's fine. So now this basically is almost the opposite of how the shot was. Just instead, if the enemy collides with the player shot, then it will get destroyed, or it'll call the enemy destroy, and then it will destroy itself. Now, one thing that this doesn't do is if it collides with the player, the enemy will keep going, which I think is what we want. If it collides with the player, yeah, we'll let it keep going. That's fine. And this should hopefully actually not cause any problems, because if the player does get destroyed, we're about to restart the scene, so there shouldn't be any problems there. And then it's going to destroy itself. Now, eventually, when we deal with making fancy explosions for the enemies being destroyed, this is where we'll also do them in here. So guess we kind of would have needed to make this anyways. Also, it gets a reference to the enemy manager, and instead of using GameObject.find, we used find object of type enemy manager, which I believe is a better way of doing it. And this works because the way that we want it to, because we only have one enemy manager in the scene. So when we do this, it'll definitely get the one that we want it to. So with all of that done, nothing needs to compile. So setting this up with the shield pickup, with dragging in that prefab, you want to make sure that you drag in the prefab and not, if you had this in the scene, dragging this in here and then deleting it, because it won't work properly. So you want to make sure that you drag in the prefab reference from this project window as opposed to from the hierarchy. So putting in the shield pickup, then we set these to 3 and 8. Shield setup, shield pickup is set up. So let's go into play mode and make sure it works, which I'm pretty sure, unless I accidentally change something, it should still work. So now when we destroy enemies every 3 to 8, oh, if I don't get destroyed, actually just to to quickly test this, I'll actually just go and set the numbers super low. Going out of edit mode here, setting the numbers to 1 and 2. So every 1 or 2 enemies that we destroy should spawn a shield. Not that one. Ooh, that one. Hey, we got a shield. Cool. Oh, and now it got destroyed. So now let's do another one. Oh, that one. Oh, that one dropped the shield. Oh, cool. And then can get destroyed again. Oh, and now we got destroyed. So yeah, now we have a shield pickup. That's nice and handy dandy. We can also miss it, and then eventually it'll get destroyed anyway. As well, if you get a shield twice, that doesn't do anything. But that's up something for you guys to do if you want to. You could make different levels of shields. So maybe if you get 2 shields, then it turns like blue or something. And then if you get a third one, then it can go all rainbow colored. And then maybe you could be invincible for a few seconds. Copying a certain game I mentioned earlier. So yeah, that works as that. Sorry about what happened, I guess. My recording got corrupted after making all this, and this just seemed like the easier way to go about showing everything as opposed to remaking it all from scratch. Anyway, so that'll do it for this episode. Then, hopefully the next one will go better. But in the next episode, we will be then making a gun pickup that'll allow the ship to shoot 2 guns have 2 guns shooting 2 bullets temporarily to sort of increase the range of shooting. Yeah, alright. We might also then need to change the player's model a bit to sort of account for that. We could potentially swap out this front for like one that has 2 holes, I guess. Although, the way that you see the player's model, we actually might be able to get away with just spawning them, and that might not be noticeable in any way. Who knows? But anyway, we'll deal with that when we get there. So, that'll do it for this episode. Thank you all so much for watching, and goodbye! Let's hope that this one doesn't get corrupted.